Welcome to the Container Security Group meeting. Looks like big one for today is just, I wanted to follow up on, is there anything we need to discuss related to alerts? I know we've had a lot of asynchronous communication back and forth, so that's the number one topic for today. I just want to make sure, are we good to go on our approach there, or are there still questions or things we need to discuss?
There are questions. I haven't caught up since yesterday, but last I looked yesterday, there were questions. Arthur, did you want to verbalize them, or are you happy now?
I think some answered. It was not. It's not a question really. It's more a comment that there are problems in the direction that needs a further investigation. Yeah, I think from my understanding, Sam understand that there are some challenges, and yeah, I think he wants to move in that direction, and yeah, I think it makes sense, kind of. But some things need a further investigation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know it's tricky a lot getting the flows mapped back to an individual policy, and I saw, Zamir, you've mapped it to the rule, but now we still need to map the rules to policies. So we've made one step forward, but there's still more to go, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think we might need to take a little bit more time figuring out more details before like trying to go anyways and maybe hitting like a roadblock or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I understand this is going to take more than one iteration, and we want to do it right. So I think we're headed in the right direction. Let's just be, let's try to solve the hard problems first. I know it's tempting to sometimes to go solve the easy problems that are known, but let's focus on those hard problems, especially Arthur, while you're here, in case we do need to make any upstream contributions to Cilium. You have previous experience with that, so I want to make the most of your time while you're here if we do end up needing to do something upstream. Do we need to discuss the outstanding bug that we have for giving users the ability to edit default policies?
Yeah, I had a question on that actually. It's not that I don't want to start a discussion, it's just more like a question. I was thinking that was the main design of having the policy editor for Cilium network policies. And then on the same time, we provide out-of-the-box policies that are more generic. So now it seems to me that we are trying to create like a mix, both of them, kind of a Frankenstein mode. I don't like the idea of deploying on editing. So that's why I raised those points over there.
Yeah, so I think it's a good idea to convert the default policies to Cilium policies instead of generic network ones. We've already decided to support Cilium specifically, so this is in line with the rest of that. The challenge with supporting generic network policies is nice, because then users can potentially pick their own network policy provider. They could go with Calico, they could go with something else. But whenever you try to genericize things, what you lose is the ability to do those deep integrations and get really specific. So, for example, like our network policy editor, it would be really hard to do something like that and support everything. Like, in order to provide a really good user experience, at some point, we have to say, this is it. We're going to go with Cilium, and we're not going to support the others. So that's kind of the trade-off, is usability versus supporting everything. And I would rather go with usability. So if the answer is to just convert those to Cilium network policies, then let's do that, if that will help.
Yeah, the only actually a couple of concerns, but in this specific topic, I already mentioned that we are technically reducing functionality by doing that. I was trying to find the handbook page for how to handle that. But I think we agreed right now to just handle it in the docs, right? I think it should be
Yeah.
fine, but because it's still a new feature, but technically previously we were supporting any generic network policy supporting provider, but after this change, it will be only Cilium specific, which is a bit unfortunate, but yeah, not much we can do other than expand editor to support other policies, but it's a bit tricky to do. Yeah, and the second topic is arised yesterday. I actually had a good progress on the change, but playing with it locally, I think I don't really like the direction. And I honestly would recommend to wait for Kyle to return to get UX approval on that. So the idea is when you click edit on a predefined policy, it will be deployed and then you will transition to the editing screen. I think it's super unconventional for GitLab to do that. And I'm a bit hesitant to commit into this solution. And since I'm not the UX person and we don't have it right now, from my understanding, Kyle is on PTO, so I would maybe recommend to wait a bit and see what he will say, because he's just more knowledgeable in this area and I don't know where to look for the advice if it's a good solution or not. But my gut feeling it's not from the UX perspective. So yeah, implementation wise it's really close. I can just push my branch, but UX wise I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great idea to run it by Kyle. I would love to see what you have working now, because maybe I'm not understanding something.
Yeah,
So maybe
because
maybe I can join in that demo.
Because semantically, like when you click right now on any edit button in GitLab, it will transition you to the editing interface, right? There is no side action in this process. You are not expecting that something will happen with your cluster, but we are changing the semantic to you clicking edit. There is no confirmation or hint, but there will be a change. Yeah, I realize that it's not destructive action in a way that policy is disabled, but it will change the state of your cluster. And on top of that, it's conditional. It's not happens all the time. It only happens with the predefined policies. So I think changes the semantic just makes like user and like process more what is happening behind the click, and it's not clear. And then I'm pretty sure someone will return to us, say, hi, hey, why did you deploy a policy when I did not want to deploy a policy in the first place, just so I could edit it. I think it's overall a bit intrusive flow, and like I would personally not expect this to happen when I click on edit. So again, is this just my gut feeling? I propose to just wait for Kyle and see what he feels about that. Like, is it going to be consistent with other UIs we have, and what's the UX position in such changes?
Arthur, I have a question for you. Let me know if you don't feel comfortable saying that. That's okay. When you click edit, so then what would happen if you click cancel? Would the policy, it should be Cilium network policy now with the same values, or?
Yeah, I actually changed the policies to Cilium to, and it's not one-to-one because it's a bit awkward to make drop policies with Cilium right now. So yeah, that's another question, more topic to discuss, but it's not super important from my understanding. But yeah, idea is not that clicking will result in conversion. It's more that once we have this version deployed, all the predefined policies will have Cilium specification. So essentially, if it will go in 13.5, so in 13.5, the predefined policies will be Cilium spec, you will be using Cilium spec. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I have a different question. I mean, from the user's perspective, I would actually expect these to be deployed into the cluster when I first install Cilium, because they are default policies, default out-of-the-box policies. To me, that says that they should be installed out of the box, like at the time that Cilium is deployed. And of course, they would be deployed in a disabled state. But I would actually expect that to happen not when I click the edit button, but when I first, do that installation of Cilium, or I guess we're calling it container network, GitLab container network policies is our GitLab branded, wrapped up Cilium solution.
I can understand that, but at the same time, it will be really hard for us to handle it generically. Like we provide the scripts, but we don't force users to use those scripts, right? For example, if someone from DigitalOcean Cloud would decide to use our products, they already have a Cilium installed, and we don't have ability to push anything up there on the installation state. It's going to be similar with Google Cloud eventually, because Dataplane V2 is Cilium, has Cilium bundled in it, right? And then in other clouds, users before committing to GitLab can have Cilium or any other provider deployed to their clusters. So I think our current logic is a bit better and generically, and at the same time, it's more how I'd imagine Kubernetes supposed to work, because while there is a data storage in forms of usually etcd on Kubernetes, it's not meant to store disabled resources, right? Disabling in Kubernetes is removing action. So in our case, since we're kind of using disable state by using a trick, so I felt like in our case, the logic we have right now is that enabling policy will trigger the first deploy was a bit better solution. That's why I originally went with that. But we could change it, but I don't think it will be possible to generically support all the situations. So I think maybe current ID still will be a bit better.
It also impacts if we happen to change the out-of-the-box policies, because now you don't have a way to handle things that wasn't installed to begin with. So you're still going to need to at least check for that and have a behavior defined.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, I'm fine to wait on this one until Kyle comes back. There's no rush. I think we're fine to wait and get a UX review. All right.
So Tim, on the one that you commented that we probably shouldn't talk about it on a public recording, I agree, let's not. Let's jump to the second one.
Great.
And you already answered in the notes.
Okay, so I just wanted to continue the discussion with the time that we have left here, 10 minutes or so, that we started last week about scanning, container scanning. So we talked about a few different potential solutions. Wayne, you had a comment here. Do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, so I know we found one good solution for container scanning after the container is already running. Trivy, I think it is. Yep, Trivy. There are many or container native scanning solutions, but those have pros and cons, and some big cons, and also probably some big pros. We've shied away from those, and I think the non-container native ones that I think has been the right call. So we know one. I like having more than one to choose from, or it feels like if more than one exists. So I guess I know we're nowhere near a decision point, but I think we definitely want to look at more than one before making a decision. Open source solutions that we can use for container scanning post the container being instantiated.
We could write a Spike issue and get someone officially doing that research.
Yeah, we absolutely should do that. And let's, from lessons learned from this, let's look at what the requirements are that we want to meet, and then look at how Trivia meets them. Not start Trivia does this. Let's find a Trivia alternative. Um, so, which is easy to do, and we should take advantage. We should definitely list everything in Trivia we like, but not say, can we find a Trivia alternative? So, I know we're not there yet, but I'm really happy when we do that.
Just wanted to mention again, I checked it after the previous week discussion. There is a comparison in Trivia docs at the bottom with other solutions, including proprietary, like what the doc does. So maybe just check that things first, because if it satisfies the topic of research, there is no point of doing additional research beyond that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, Arthur. That's a good point to bring that up again. I did read through that. My first blush is it didn't come up. It didn't have any good alternatives to Trivia that would work for us, but it's still a good article to read. And I may have gotten it wrong too. I just skimmed through it when you posted that. It's good. It's a good first step to look at alternatives. And Trivia might be awesome, and it might be the direction we want to go, or it might not be. Right? It's one potentially good option. And Tiago and Sam, you have some other comments on this? I know you've written the notes, you haven't been able to verbalize just yet.
No,
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't want to override the priorities that we've got to do the spike. Like, I wanted to start the discussion now because it's the next thing coming, down the road. But for now, let's stay focused on alerts. I don't want to, prematurely chase the next thing when we haven't finished the thing that we're already on, right? So let's stay focused. I do want to have some of these discussions though, just so that we can talk through some of the challenges as a group and start looking at solutions, not to distract from the main priority, but to help me give you good requirements going into it, just to make sure that we're thinking through the problem in a complete way. So that's really the purpose of bringing up the discussion at this point, even though we're not quite ready to start work on it. So I do have a few questions that I posted to the design issue, the requirements design issue, since this all really is still back in that requirements and design phase. Maybe we can pick one of them and talk about it now. One of the things that we're going to need to handle in this scanning of production environments is the ability to schedule regular scans. Where people might say, I want to scan this container, once a week at 2 a.m. on Sunday, for example. And so do we have any thoughts on where that configuration might live? Is that something that would end up being stored in GitLab, like in our database? Would that go in the repository in a YAML file, and would Auto DevOps somehow push that into the Kubernetes cluster? Do you have any, obviously, you haven't had any time to research this, but I think it might be interesting to talk about where we store those configuration parameters.
I mean, don't we have now a security center that's where a lot of these other settings will go? Something that Matt worked on from a vulnerability management perspective. But I had the impression that we wanted to configure some of the, because DAST has the same problem, right? You want to have, and the other analyzer, you want to have schedule things, and the way we do these, that we run these scanners outside the CI pipeline is a little bit of a hack. It relies on the schedule pipeline, but it's not a first class citizen. It's you're just using that as a trigger for your scan.
Yeah, I think in the UI there's some overlap. Sorry, I guess I should go ahead, Zamir and Arthur. We'll come back.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't think that pipelines in this case are a good way for running those scans, because I personally would be hesitant to give access to GitLab to my production cluster and then running CI pipelines against those. I think probably the only thing comes to mind is actually the agent, Kubernetes agent that orchestration is working. I know it's a bit controversial, but they have a place to store those configs, and if you want a time-based scheduling, you can just deploy a cron jobs, Kubernetes cron jobs for that will do the scanning. So I think I see a lot of things fit really well in what you said. So to describe it a bit more, how agent works, there is a special repository that is dedicated to Kubernetes manifests that continuously synced with the cluster. So if you want to trigger a pipeline, you could potentially set up we could potentially set up a cron job up there that will trigger, and because agent is already sits in production cluster, it can trigger job from inside. So it's a really clean solution for running production loads triggered by GitLab. So that might be worth investigating in connection to the scanning.
Got it.
To me,
It's just I haven't considered the implementation yet, but I was thinking if depends on how we are going to prioritize the integration with V1 or V2, we might have to consider how this configuration is going to reach. I'm imagining that maybe the application has a configuration internally to do that, to do these scans. Otherwise, I think the background job that Arthur is mentioning, it's an interesting way of us handling this from our side.
and it aligns with V3, right? Which is not, it's called GitOps, but it seems to be what they're planning at the moment. So we back to that thing where we don't quite know where it's going. But yeah, it's a good point to consider.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. I just wanted to add the comment there of note that the UI for scheduling these, you mentioned Dast, Tiago. I think the UI is going to overlap between us and Dast and really all of the other scanners as well, since they all have the need to schedule their scans. So the policy editor that we released right now in the navigation hierarchy, it's under security and compliance, and then under threat management, and it's a tab in there. The long-term plan always has been to up-level that one. So it's security and compliance policies, and have that policy editor be cross-functional for all of secure and defend. So I've actually been talking with Derek quite a bit on this topic over the last couple of weeks. I think likely there'll be a UI where you get a list of scans and you can schedule a scan there. And then also in the policy editor, you can make a policy to have a scan run on a schedule. So it'll kind of be two ways of managing the same thing, but some of the UI will be shared. So we're still working out the details on all of that. We don't have, it'll make a lot more sense when we have mocks, and we don't have mocks yet. But we are working through that design. But yeah, kind of the big question is, where does that live on the back end? So I think Arthur and Zamir, you've given us some good ideas, good starting place on how we might think about that.
What you said, Sam, reminded me of something that Arthur and Zamir might not have heard about yet, but there's there's requests from customers to manage policies at an organization level. So a lot of our security products work at a project level. And when you've got hundreds or thousands of projects, it becomes very hard to manage that consistently across the board. So I think that's part of what the security center, I don't know if I'm calling it the right name, but these policies would be from an organization perspective at the group or instance level. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll need it at all three levels eventually. We'll have to figure out where we start. Likely we'll start at the project level just because that's going to be the easiest to get started. But yeah, you're right, Tiago. For when it comes to the secure scans, the biggest need is actually up at the instance and group level. Cool. I
one-
think
one
we're at
thing-
time, even 2 minutes over. Go
Can
ahead,
I-
Thiago.
One
Yes.
quick comment on what we've been calling the instance level. So a GitLab instance is the server, it's the whole thing. When we talk at an instance level from a product point of view, we probably mean the root group. So like the top level group for an organization. So when you go to that top level menu and you hit more, that's sort of the instance level, but it doesn't affect every group in the instance. It just affects your base group, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. By instance level, we really mean that top level group.
Yeah. Just calling out because it was something that Matt mentioned. I was like, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that terminology. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time today.